Okie dokie, and we meet once again. This is video number 9 of our Move Advanced Smart Contract Language tutorial. We have reached the end of this video tutorial series. In this video tutorial, we are going to be deploying a module in the Aptos testnet, and we will make calls to that module using the Aptos SDK. Obviously, this whole time we were learning a programming language. Now we need to apply it. We have to build something that we can take advantage of. I am going to deploy the module that we did on video number 8, the last video regarding the vectors. We are going to be deploying a price feed module in which we will associate the token to a price. We will call that module the price feed module to obtain the token price on chain. The first item that I need to work with is with the module. And you might say, but we did already the module on video number 8. Yes, but in order for us to deploy this in the Aptos blockchain, the mainnet or the testnet, I have to define the functions with visibility. If we are defining a function to be public, that means that function can be called from other modules, or it can be called outside the blockchain, off-chain. But in order for us to make a call to a function that will be defined as a view function that will give us values back, we have to add an attribute on the function. We have to define this to be a view function. This has to be done on the module. Same goes when executing write functions, which will involve signing the function and sending some arguments. I have to define the public entry on that particular function. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's modify the module just to make those functions view, public, and public entry. And once we're done with that, I am going to work with the SDK. We will do a read function and we will do a write function using the SDK so that we know how can we interact with the module. This module, you are already familiar with it. This was the previous video. So real quick, what I'm going to do is the following. So we know the get token price, that is the function that is going to give us the token prices. It's going to read the module, it's going to get the information out of the vectors and display them. Now I have to say that this function is a view function, meaning that I don't need to sign that transaction. It's not a transaction to write on the blockchain, which means that I don't have to pay for that. It's just a view function. So what I'm going to do right above it, I am going to define view. Okay, so we are defining this to be view. Next, I need to also define this to be public. So I'm going to say it is a public function. Now I should be able to access this function outside of the blockchain, or another smart contract can call this smart contract and read token prices. So then we can do any other transaction like a DeFi swap. So I can invoke this smart contract or this module and obtain those values and continue a transaction. So we define this to be a view function. Now the function that will be updating those token prices, the update feed function, has to be defined as public, but public will allow other modules to call this particular function. Also, I need to add entry so then I can allow myself to pass the arguments off-chain to this particular function. We are going to save this, and now we are ready to deploy. I'm going to open my terminal, and we are going to say aptos move compile. Perfect. It has compiled without errors, and we are going to clear, and now I am going to deploy this. What's going to happen is the account that is associated to this project. And by the way, I got to show you something first. Let me show you real quick. So on your files, on the project files, we have the config YAML. This will be the account that will be used to deploy the module. This will be the owner of the module. Also, under the package file, we have to make sure that when we deploy the module, we name the package based on the module. It is not mandatory, but it's ideal. Okay, we should be labeling the package name as the project name, or because we could have multiple modules inside this project, but then it needs to have a name that is relevant to the whole project itself. Like if you have a DeFi application, you're going to call this like DeFi app, and inside the DeFi app, we will have multiple modules doing different things. So make sure that this is relevant to the project, and that's it. Okay, so we are going back onto the console, onto the terminal, and now I'm going to say aptos move deploy. And if everything goes well, I should obtain now a prompt asking me if I want to submit the transaction. This right here, this value will be the quote, the gas fee in Aptos, which is the unit measurement of gas in Aptos. So it's actually telling me that it's going to take a gas unit price of 100 octets. We say yes, And ladies and gentlemen, we have deployed the module in the Aptos Devnet. Now, if I want to take a look at the module, I can go to the Explorer. So I'm gonna click and get to that Explorer. And now we can see that the transaction has been successfully submitted. If we want to see the payload, we will see that we have published package transaction. So we have published a module on the Aptos Devnet. If we go to changes, then we will see exactly everything that has been deployed, which basically is deploying the entire module. This is the ABI, the application binary interface, and we have the functions and the contract all defined. Those are the calls that I will be doing to store data. If I go to my account, so if I go back to overview and I click right here, the sender, this will have the module that is deployed under the account. So if we go under modules, we click modules, then we have the price feed along with the module that has been deployed. Now, if I want to run will be to send values, to update values in the smart contract. We will click run and we will have the function right here to update the feed, okay? And right away, we can see that it's expecting 2 arguments. And we know the 2 arguments in this function to update the token price is number 1, we have to send the price number, the number that we will be updating to that price feed. And second will be the string value of the token, okay? So remember on the previous video, we passed BTC as a string. If we go to view, then we have a function to get token price. This is the function that all I have to pass, it will be the token symbol. Let's do the following. I'm going to now work with the SDK and we will send calls and update the module. So I have created a folder called Aptos _SDK. The first thing that I'm going to do, I am going to be installing, by the way, this requires Node.js. So you have to install the latest version of Node.js. Once you're done with that, you have to install the Aptos SDK. One way is just to go through the Aptos SDK documentation. If we go to aptos.dev, we go to build, we hit SDK right here, okay? So we'll do that. And now we want to work with the TypeScript SDK. We'll select the TypeScript SDK, and now we can go ahead and install the SDK here. But there's a couple of things. In order for me to run TypeScript files from Node.js, I have to install TS Node. So I did this tutorial in a very simple approach. I am going to publish the package JSON file in my GitHub repo for this particular video. You can head to the GitHub repo for the advanced. So if we head to my GitHub repo, and it's on the video link description below, you click under advanced, we head to Aptos SDK. Inside here, I will be publishing the package JSON file. All you have to do is import it into your new folder and type npmi. Okay, so we are going to write that file, package JSON, and I am going to add the contents. So you can see it right here. We got the dependencies. It's going to install the Aptos SDK, and it's also going to install all the dependencies to run TypeScript Node, okay? Also, another file that you need to add is going to be the tsconfig.json. So we're going to say tsconfig.json, all right? And you just copy and paste the information that I will be publishing in the GitHub repo, okay? And that's it. That's all we have to do. I'm going to open my terminal. All we have to do is npmi. That's it. You can see I went through my Aptos _SDK folder, npmi, and I have everything ready to go. Simple. Now I am going to write the first SDK file, which is going to include the SDK utility. I'm going to create a function that is going to wrap designer, so it's easier for us to work with the read and write functions. So I'm going to call this new file, Aptos utils, TS in TypeScript, disable null console. The first thing I'm going to be importing from the SDK is to wrap the private key. Okay, so we are going to be importing the private key. And by the way, I am importing it on the file, but you should not do that. You should use environmental variables so then you can hide that private key. We are going to say ED25519 private key. This represents the private key of an EA25519 key pair. Now the next thing I'm going to import is going to be Aptos config. Just keep pressing enter, put it right here. And next thing I'm going to import from the SDK will be the network. This allows me to select the mainnet, devnet, or testnet, network to network name, and that's it. Okay, so those are my imports. Now I'm going to build a variable that is going to point to the devnet. So this is how we tell Aptos, the SDK, that we will be interacting with the devnet. I'm going to say constant Aptos network, and this will be type network, which we will invoke out of the SDK, equals to network name. And now we pass network devnet. With this, we are already telling the SDK we will be interacting with the devnet. Next, constant, we are going to build a config variable that is going to initiate a new connection or that new interaction. Aptos config, and we are going to say network, Aptos network, which we define right here, okay? So we're building that function or interface that will allow me to call the Aptos blockchain. Now we are defining the Aptos instance. This will be the Aptos SDK instance, new Aptos, and we will pass config. There you go. That's how we initialize that Aptos session. Now we are going to create a constant to store the private key. We are going to say constant, and we can say owner private key. And this will be the string value of that private key. So let's get that. I'm going to head to my YAML file, and my private key is right here. So you can see it right here. Copy, and let's go back. I'm going to go and paste it here. Got the private key. And now we are building that function that will wrap the signer. It's going to create a function to wrap the signer. And then we can use that signer function to make calls. Will be write calls. So we're going to say constant, and we will say get signer async. And inside here, we will define constant private key, and we will now invoke that ED25519 private key and represent our owner private key. Now we create a signer constant await, and now we interact with the SDK. Aptos, which is defined here. And now we derive account from private key. And this is how we create that signer account or signer interface to send the calls. And what do I need to pass? Will be private key, which is defined right here. Okay, this is the key pair, and it's passed right here. And this is the signer itself. And we just return it. So we got the signer. And now all I have to do is export those two. And now we will build two files, one to read and one to write. So then you see the difference. Okay, I'm just going to export. We're going to use this on all of our functions. Get signer and Aptos, because we need to interact with the Aptos SDK on the other functions. I'm going to save this, and that is the utils. Now let's build that function to write to the module. We are going to be sending the arguments to the module, and we will update the token prices. Okay, so we're going to say a new file, and let's call this Aptos write. Yes, this will be our function to write. And we are just going to import the two functions that we exported from the Aptos util, which will be the get signer, and the Aptos from Aptos util. Now I have to define two constants. The first one is going to be the account. This will be my account address, which calls the module because the module is associated to the account address. And the second function is the module name. This is how we get account module function. This is the entire path. So we are going to say constant, and we will call this account, and we will pass the account value. So let me go back into my YAML file, and I'm going to grab this account. I'm going to copy that and throw it right here. The next one is going to be the module name. What's the module name? It's price underscore feeds. If you want to confirm, you go to the module, and this will be right here. This is the module name. So I'm going to grab price feeds. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to add it here. Okay. This will be the module name. Now let's write that function. Let's call this constant write module function. Let's just call it like this. It's going to be async, and we have to pass two arguments. Remember on the module, when we update the feed, what are the two arguments? The two arguments are going to be the owner is already, we will pass the owner, but we don't pass it as an argument. It's going to be passed as a get signer function that we define in the utils file. We have to pass two arguments, the last price and the symbol. Let's say the first argument is going to be price, and we will define this to be string. Why? Because in the Aptos SDK, we just pass string values. But if we want to define something to be sent as a string, we need to have that type in the argument itself. Don't worry, you'll see this. So this will be just a string, and the symbol is also going to be a string. And we will begin this right here. Now we are saying, let me open this right here. Now we're going to say const signer, and now we await get signer. Now we are going to wrap the transaction. This will be the transaction envelope. We will add the function name that we need to call. We will add the arguments, and we will also add the signer. Okay, so let's just call this txn await, and now we have to invoke the SDK. Aptos transaction build and simple. Inside the simple, we are passing the arguments. First, signer. We have to define this property signer, which is what? It's going to be signer account address. From the signer, we will pass the account address as the signer. Next, data. Inside the data, we are sending a JSON format payload with the function name or the function path and the arguments. Okay, so we will define data, and now we are saying that this will be a JSON payload. The function, this is very important for us to understand. The function parameters are as follow. I'm going to write it here. So a function path needs to be account, which will be the account value, this value right here, then the name of the module, and finally the name of the function. This will be the function value that I need to pass, okay, to make the call. So under function, what I'm going to do, I am going to add variable interpolation so that we can generate this particular syntax, okay? So backtick, and let's do interpolation right here. I'm gonna say account, this will be the value, right? Now I'm going to interpolate again, so then we can pass that module variable that we have right here. This will be the price feed module. And now we will finally pass the function name. What is the function name that is going to allow me to update those token prices? Let's take a look at that. It's going to be update feed. So I have to make sure that I pass that exactly. So let's do update feed. And that's it. This is the function, and this is what we need to pass, which will be invoking all this. Next, type arguments. Type arguments is when I need to call something out of the move standard library or another module, I can pass that as an argument. So let's say this is not the case for this particular function, but there's certain functions that we might need to be invoking or calling another module. We can use, because we need to pass a type, because we need to pass a function of another module as a type, so that we can make a call to this particular function, which we will see that in the expert tutorial. We can actually pass other modules as arguments in a function, but in this case, we're not doing that. If we were doing this, it's going to look something like this. I'm gonna add this right here. It's gonna look very similar to how we import from the standard library. It's gonna be 0x1. Then we can say, for example, this is not the case. We can say string, and then we can from there say string, right? I'm showing you how can we do that, but we will do this for modules. We will import other module functions into a particular function argument if we need to. Don't worry, this will be in the expert video tutorials. And finally, we will pass the arguments. So we will say function, and this is what is expected in the data payload, okay? This is the function, type arguments, and function arguments. And now we pass the actual values that we want to use, right? This will be passed as a array or a vector. And what is the first argument that I need to pass in update feed? It's going to be the price, okay? So we pass price, and the second value is going to be the symbol. But the symbol, it is expected for us to pass the symbol as type string. Why is that? If we go back onto the Explorer, we want to take a look at run update feed. You can see here that it's expecting me to pass this as a string. Okay, I cannot just pass the string as it is. I have to pass the string type as part of the argument. Check this out. Again, do backtick, and we will say string colon, and then I can actually pass the value of the symbol. If I do interpolation symbol, and there you go. We are passing the two arguments onto update feed, and we pass this type string colon, and then I pass the actual value. And we are effectively done here, and we are done with the module. So this will be, by the way, I forgot, this is not signer, this will be sender. This will be sender right here. I was like, why do I have an issue here? But it's sender, it's not signer. I'm a human, I make mistakes. So we have this signer, we got the envelope. Now below here, I can actually commit that transaction. Now we are executing the transaction on the blockchain. So I'm gonna say constant committed, I'm gonna call this committed TN, and we will say await, and we will call once again Aptos, and now sign and submit transaction. Sign and submit transaction. And we were effectively now going to send the envelope. We're gonna say signer, and we will pass signer once again. You can see it right here. And we define transaction, and then we send that transaction that we define right here. And that's it. This is how we effectively wrap the transaction. And now we can effectively invoke await, Aptos, wait for transaction, and we want to send the transaction hash. So this will generate a transaction hash, which we then can send to this function that will confirm that the transaction has been submitted successfully, and we will obtain a return that it was successfully submitted. We will say here, transaction hash, and we pass committed hash, committed txn dot hash. And if everything goes well, we want to display console log with the transaction hash. We're going to say console log, and we will define this committed transaction, boom. And now I can say here, committed tn hash, and we can just add a new line. So we'll say this new line, and that's it. So now let's test it out. So all I gotta do is I gotta say module function, and we will pass the two arguments. What's the first argument? We can pass it even as a numeric value. I'm gonna pass it right here, and let's say VTC. Let's update VTC. It's gonna be 63123, and we will then pass the second argument, which will be the BTC symbol. Awesome. Save this and let's test it out. And px ts node aptos write. Okay, so we say that TS node, then we point to the root of this project folder, Aptos write TS, press enter and pray. Now it's gonna work. There we go. We got the write transaction executed on the Aptos Devnet. Let's grab this value right here. I'm gonna go to the Explorer and we will see what we get. Now we are going to search right here and we have something. Boom, we have a success. And this will be the transaction information. If we go to payload, we should see the arguments. There we go. So we can see the arguments, 63123, the price, and string BTC as the symbol type. Awesome, it's looking very good. Now let's do the view function so that we can obtain this value back. So now we are going to write another file. This will be Aptos view TS, okay, so that we can obtain the value. With view, I don't need to send the signer, because with view, all I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the Aptos Devnet, which means that I don't need to send a signer for that. The only thing that I'm going to be importing, Aptos, from the Aptos util file that we created, okay? We only import that. And now I am going to be importing another thing from the SDK, okay? It's going to be what? Input view function data, okay? So this is how we can send a view call using the SDK. And now we are going to write, once again, the account and the module name. I can just copy this from the right file. So I'm just gonna copy this. I'm gonna go to view, set in view. And now we can write that view function. It's going to be a little bit more straightforward. I'm gonna say constant view module function. It's gonna be asynchronous. And all I have to pass as the argument to view the token price is going to be the symbol. That's the only thing that we have to provide. If you remember on the last video, it's the only argument that I have to pass, the symbol. This will be a symbol, this will be a string. And we do that view function. And I'm going to write that payload. So constant payload, this is all I have to send to the blockchain. And this will be type input. This is how we define. The type is going to be input view function data equals, and then we can go ahead and write this up. And it's going to be very similar to the write function. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to save time. I'm going to go to write, and this will be right here. The only arguments that I have to pass is this. Okay, so I have to grab this right here, copy. Those are the three arguments that I have to pass. Function, type argument, and function arguments. Let's go to view and let's throw that in. And now under the function arguments, remember the only thing that I have to pass is going to be the string, the symbol. Okay, so I'm just going to delete the price, and that's all I have to send. Now the function name has to change to the get token price, which will be the view function that we define in the modules. Get token price. Okay, we can confirm get token price right here is a view function. All right, and we have defined the payload with input view function data. Now we can say constant, and we will grab the output. We want to see what the values are. We're going to say equals, and we send that transaction, or we send that call, and we send those arguments. Okay, Aptos view. This is how we say using the SDK that we are invoking a view function, and we will just pass payload, which we defined here previously. And if we go console log, if we do output, we should obtain the return as a vector or as an array type. All right, this is done. Now let's go ahead and run that function. I'm going to save this. I'm going to say view module function, and the symbol that I want to get the values for is going to be BTC. So I'm going to say BTC, and let's see what we get. Now I'm going to run it from here, Aptos view. Okay, from this node, enter, and see what we get. Oh, you like that, huh? We were able to, I told you it was an array type. We were able to obtain 63123. That is the value that we obtained, and also the timestamp. So remember on the last video, we worked with timestamp, and I mentioned that under tests, we're not going to see the timestamp because that's not the blockchain. But now this is the actual timestamp on the Aptos Devnet. Okay, so we are recording also the timestamp on the vector on the module. Awesome. If I want to obviously return only this value, I can just say output here 0. I'm gonna say output 0 right here. We're gonna go back, do it again, and we should not have the array. Okay, awesome. Let's write 2 more tokens and let's see the output for all of them. Okay, so let me go back to write. I'm going to update this Bitcoin price. I'm gonna say 64113. I'm gonna save this, run it again. Boom. So we got the BTC price updated. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add Ethereum, and this will be 2003.11. Okay, let's just do that. Boom. Wait for the transaction to finalize. Boom. Transaction has been committed. And now let's say APT. Let's store APT, and we will say 9. Okay, and we will run this once again. Beautiful. So we have stored 3 different token prices. We actually updated 1 token price, which was BTC, ETH stored new, and then stored APT new. Okay, now we should see the changes. Now let's go to view, and we will still grab BTC price. Now we will also obtain ETH, and finally we will obtain APT, and we will see what we get. Clear, and this will be view. There you have it. We were able to update the price of Bitcoin, 64113, get ETH price, and also get the APT price. And this is the end of the Move Advanced Smart Contract Language tutorial. The next tutorial is going to be the expert tutorial. We will work with the Aptos framework token module. We will also work with objects in Move, and we will write full-blown dApps using the Aptos framework. I hope that you enjoy this tutorial series. If you like my content, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed too, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.